So we're discussing over here in this up to here about the various different letters, levels of letters of oisios. Oisios are sort of the vehicle and the block that bring down the light, which brings down the uh, oir. We're explaining the eish levana, eish choira al gabe eish levana, which says that the pasuk he brought down, you have the uh, white fire and you have the black fire. So you have, Chazal say, you have the black fire on top of the white fire. That's the revelation of Hashem, the white on the black. So what is the white and what is the black? So as we go up into the higher madregas, the white is the revelation. The black is the contraction, is the restriction, which you don't see so much. Just like when you have an idea, the idea gets passed to the other person when he speaks, but you have the intellect dress up and restrict the idea in the words that you are giving over. The same thing is, you have the idea restricted in the thought process, which is the letter of a machshava. And he said there is also higher the level of letters in the soul. The letters are the black, just like physically you have a parchment and then you write with black ink on the Torah. So you have the black on the white. The parchment represents the Ein Sof. The black represents the letters, the restricted Gilui. As he explained that to us, from our perspective, what we don't understand is black because we don't have access there. But to the perspective of Hashem is just the opposite. Any time that the idea of comes down restricted, that means that it's black. It's no longer fully there. These restrictions, which is the idea of oisios, those are the restricting the light, that has several different levels. So you have like letters that you engrave. They are not separate letters like you would write on a parchment with an ink. So they're engraved, but yet there is a certain level of darkness. So the stone that you engrave it would be called the white. That's like the parchment. The engraving makes it a little black, but it's not fully black. And it gives over from the stone itself. As it goes down the level, then it goes down to the level of machshava, which the letters become more black, more restricted. And then to dibur, to speech, which is more restricted. So these are all representation of the restrictions of the Ein Sof as it comes down. You have the level of Keser. Keser is also, but that Keser is like letters that are engraved, which means the restrictions there is very little. Then you have in the level of Machshava. That's already when it comes down into the level of Chochma Bina. It's more. And then when it comes further down, it becomes letter of Ksav. Let's look inside. Banim shall move on. The example is understood. Shezehu inyan yoshes choshech sisre. We say that Hashem makes the place where he hides is dark. Dark means it's restricted. That is called B'chinas Keser Elyon. The dark place, that is the supreme Keser. That's the level of Keser. Shenimshech mimalchus the Ein Sof, that comes from the Ein Sof Malchus. That's the highest level, the level of infinite Hashem's Malchus. The Oir Me'ein Hamoir, the Oir Ein Sof, and it comes down Bechinas Oisius. It comes down in a level of Oisius. So Keser is already a level of Oisius. So what does that mean? It's Oisius of Chakika. She'im hayoyse yadayin b'chinas ein sof, or although it is still in the level of Ein Sof, it's infinite. Ukemoy oisios hachakika minei ubei, just like letters of engraved which come from the stone itself. There's no additive. There's no ink on paper. It is formed. The letters are formed from within the stone itself. That means that it's the level of Ein Sof. This is higher than the level of Chochmo Bina. Shenikra Asiya Mamesh Legabe Ein Sof. That is called Chochmo Bina, are called like the level Kulam b'Chochma Osisa. It's a level of Asiya relative to the Ein Sof. When we talk about Chochmo Bina, it's not like we talk about Keser. Keser, we're saying the letters there are Oisius HaChakika, because they're still Ein Sof. And that's much higher than the level of Chochmo Bina, which is called Asiya, because that is Kimoy Dioyal Gabe HaKlafchulu. That is similar to ink on top of a parchment. So while Keser is still Chakika, but it's still Oisius. Im kol zeh gam hakeser nikra choshech. Still, we will call it darkness. Keser will be called darkness. Relative to Hashem, it's darkness. And that would be the Eish Choyra Legabe Ein Sof. We call it Eish Choyra relative to the Ein Sof Baruch Hu Shalamaylo Maylo Mehakeser. Relative to the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, which is higher than the level of Keser, and the level of Ein Sof V'nikra Eish Levana. The level of Ein Sof, which is higher than Keser, that's the white fire. The level of Keser, which is Choshech Yoshech Choshech Sisrei, that's the Eish Choyre. V'harei Tzimtzum Zeh. Why do we have this Tzimtzum of Oisius, the level of Keser? Is Kidei Liyos Hisavus Achar Kach B'chinas Chochma Ubina V'Gan Eden, so that later on there should be Chochma Ubina. And from Chochma Bina should be Nimshach later into Biyah, into Gan Eden, Helyon, Tachticha ben Gan Eden. Shehu Kemoshul Oisios Shenich Tovim B'Diyoi B'chinas Chulu B'chinas Shachar Mamesh. That is like an example of letters that are written with actual ink, as opposed to Chakiko, which is B'chinas Shachar Mamesh, which is Mamesh, a level of Shachar. The level of Keser Elyon, while it's also Shachruris, there is black over there, because relative to the Ein Sof, it's also black. But when the purpose of the Oisius HaChakika is that later on it should descend even further to become more black, Oisius Al Gabi Aksav in Chochma Ubina, to be Nimshach into Gan Eden. So Gamkin al derech moshul inyan his havus oisius hanefesh. That is also by way of example the way the letters of the nefesh are created. Shehem kimoy oisius hachakukim minei ubei. When the letters are still in the soul, before they come down to the machshava and dibur, those are like letters that are engraved from the nefesh itself. And the reason is kidei sheis havu achar kach oisius mamish, so that later there can be the creation of actual letters oisius mamish b'machshov v'dibur chumrim mamish, in machshov and dibur, materialistic actually in the person's thoughts and speech, which is a shchayra mamish. That is actually a black fire, because those are actually letters that are visible and they're considered to be mamish black, not like the letters that are in the nefesh. They are just like chakika. Over there, it's mamish black. Av shel gabi ha'in sof nikra oisius shebechakika gam ki b'chinas choshech kanal. While we are saying that when we measure the Keser Elyon next to the Ein Sof, and the Keser Elyon, which is considered the level of Chakika, so we consider the Oishiv Chakika a level of Choshech Kanal. We call it Choshech, I said before, Im Kol Zeh, but yet relative to the actual letters of written, the letters of Chakika are called white. Relative to the letters of Kisav, what are we saying? What are the level of the Kisav? That's Chochmo Bina. The Hainu B'chinas Chochmo Bina, which is Chochmo Bina, which are Mekoir HaGan Eden, which are the sources for the Gan Eden, as the pasuk says, "V'nohor yotze me'eden." So then Nikra HaKeser. So Keser is called Eish Levon. That is considered the white fire. Keser is only Shchoida Regabe de Ein Sof, but Legabe Chochmo Bina, which is the real, which is Mamish Shocher. The level of Keser is considered to be Eish Levon. Eish Levon Mamish. It's actually Eish Levon Shaharei Hurak Mineu Be'al Derech Moshul, because it's only from Mineu Bay. It's not really letters that darken. It's not something from the outside that you put on the Eisach Kikum Mineu Bay. So it's mainly Ein Sof. So it's mainly the Eish Levana, and therefore relative to the level of Eish Yesh B'Ksav Chochmo Bina, that's considered Eish Levana, L'Gabi the Eish Choyro. And therefore, when we talk about Zeir Ampin of Atzilus, the Midas of Atzilus, relative to Akeser, relative to the Keser, we say Eish Choyro al Gabi Eish Levoin Alavono, the black over the white one. The white is Keser, and the Choyro is the Zok. Mishakosel Parshas Nosei Kuflam Bezal. In a similar fashion, it works also the other way. Just like Zo is called Shocher, a Shocher relative to the level of Keser, which is the Eish Levana, which is the white one. The same thing is Zo itself is also called the Eish Levana when you measure it next to Malchus of Atzilus, which is lower than it. So derech zeh gam hazo nikro legabe hamalchus da'atzilus. Also, zo is called next to malchus da'atzilus. So zo itself is called also neire chivra. It's called the white light. He and malchus nikra etzloi, and malchus is called relative to zo neire ilchma. That's the dark light. Kameshakosu, beparshas Breishis bedaf nun aleph amid aleph, ubeparshas lech lecha daf begimel amid beis, ubeparshas shoiftim an reish ayin hey amid aleph. Malchus shehi moker libya, because Malchus, which is the source of Biyah, Nikras Midas Laila V'choshech. That is called the measure of night and darkness. Shemuster Umulubish Bo Ein Sof Bebchinas Hester V'Hela. In it is dressed up in the level of Malchus. Over there, it is hidden totally. Malchus kol ilomim. Malchus brings about the kol ilomim loshen helam, which means it blocks, it obscures the oir insof. So that's why that is considered to be the level of choshech, Malchus, relative to Zoh. Zoh, as opposed to the level of Zoh. Shahu Atzilus, which is the level of Atzilus, which is the level of Yechudei Ilah. So that is Nikra, that we call Yoy. That's day and light. Malchus, therefore, is Laila because it blocks, obscures the light. But Zoh, which is Atzilus, is Yom and Oir. Ukameshikosu, Bedivra Maschil, Roni V'Simchi, Gabei, Renono Beramsho V'Simcho V'Tzafro. In the evening is Rino and joy song in the evening and Simcha B'Tzafro. And Zoh, Malchus has explained over there. And also, V'Ayi Mashikosu saved Divra Maschil B'Iraitayeh. So this is going back now to explain why is it B'Yud Nivra Ha'olam Habo. That Yud, that's the letters of the Yud Nivra Ha'olam Habo. So that's the level of the Yud that obscures and allows for only a little bit of light to come through to the Olam Habo. That is like the ink which is on the parchment. So then, shahaklaf hacholok remez libchinas eish levana. The smooth parchment without any letters, the blank parchment, that hints the level of the white fire. This is the infinite blessed light, so to speak. So the parchment, you can look at a Sefer Torah that doesn't have any letters on it. Just look at the parchment. You don't see anything over there. That's the Ein Sof. It's too high. There's no letters yet. It hasn't formed. There's no letters formed there yet in order for you to read anything. You don't see anything over there in the letters. What happens when you start writing? Hello, alidei hayud, but only through the letter yud, which is bechin anekuda shechayra. That is a black point. Shemashchir haklav, that darkens the parchment. Kedei liyis bechinas gilu v'hasoga, so that there should be now a revelation and a grasping betmunas oisayud. Now there is the image, there is the shape, the picture of the letter Yud. So all of a sudden, there is a Yud over there. There is a revelation to bring down from the Ein Sof in the Yud. So v'hinei k'moi b'moshul hanal, just like in the moshul of above, of the level of oisios of machshove, kasher boli de gilui oisios hamachshove. When the idea is revealed through the letters of one's thought. So, the letters with which you think are merely garments. They are vehicles through which this seichel comes down to the person that he thinks about it. But mikol makoim einon davar nifrad legamri, but yet they are not something totally separate. It's not like oisios and a seichel. They're not separate. Liyosh davar bifnei atzmi, that they are an entity by themselves. So you have a seichel and you have letters with shaharei, mashem mechashev u'maharer ba'oisius elu, that which the person thinks and reflects in these letters. That's the seichel itself that's dressed up in these letters. So the same thing is with this yud that is on top of the parchment that we're talking about now. So that the ink darkens the parchment to reveal the shape of the yud. The ink by itself isn't considered a actual thing. We consider this just like you have ink. It's not like you have ink and you have parchment. The ink is on the parchment. It darkens the parchment. It darkens the parchment so that the parchment will reveal the image, the shape of the yud. So it's not two separate things. It's not a parchment and letters, but it is the letters that reveal the parchments into the letter yud. Hainu. So explains, even though the shape of the yud comes only from the ink, as opposed to by chakika, where it comes from the stone. But while the yoy is the one that gives you the letter, but harebilti haklaf hanoisoy v'soiglei, so without the parchment that carries that letter and tolerates it, you would not have any shape image at all. You have a ink, if you write it in the ear, if you don't write it, you don't have anything. You need to write the letter onto the parchment. And that's how you get the shape of the letter. So you need the parchment. And that's why our sages of blessed memory said, if you have a parchment, if you have a letter that you don't have gevil, that you have parchment surrounding it from all four sides is puzzled. Let's say if you wrote a letter right next to the edge of the parchment, that's not kosher. You don't have gevil, you can't tell the letter. So you need the parchment to be around the letter, to hold on to the letter. That makes the letters okay. So therefore, so what it means is that the ink is only darkening so that the parchment will reveal it. So there is the parchment's revelation through the letter of the yud. So what do we want to say this in the example in our case? The parchment itself, which is the blessed light of the Ein Sof, reveals the Yud, which is the level of Chochmei Law. That parchment, the parchment, as we said, represents the Ein Sof. That itself reveals the Yud, the Chochmei Law. In other words, that the level of Chochmah is revealing the Ein Sof. It's not separate. Ki ant chakim, we say ant mamish. Ant means you, because Ein Sof Baruch Hu nimshach umeir b'chochmei law, that the Ein Sof Baruch Hu is extended and shines the chochmei law. V'ayin mashekosuv v'yari Yisrael tzedek doila b'pirush v'yikra avaya. So kach in Eben Nimshol, likewise in the Nimshol goes back to this shape is Al-Yidei HaTzimtzumim Harabi. Through all of these many restrictions, so Hashem Himself, not something separate, Hashem Himself in His glory comes down openly lamata. So, and this is B'Yud Nivra Ha'olam Haba. Yud created the Olam Haba, which is the Olam Haba that's Tainuk Neshamis Ba'Eir Yisov Baruch Hu Mamash. That's at the light of the Neshamis and the actual light of the Ein Sof, because through that level of the Ksiva, you get the Klaf. It's a revelation that reveals the Ein Sof. Ayin B'Parshas Bolok, Kuf Tzadik Aleph, Amud Aleph. Why do we dafke say Yud? I mean, this seems like all letters. That's the idea of the letters. The Inyan Shah Yud, Bechinas Nekuda, is the idea that we're talking about a Yud, which is only a point and it's the smallest of all the letters. Is Ayin Mashakosu Bebiura Posik Mayim Rabim Gabe. Zohu Achois Lanu Ketana explains over there the Achois Lanu Ketana based on that pasuk. V'ayin Zoyer Chelik Beis Truma Kuf Samachei Beis begin the Is Chulu Afal Gav Chulu V'inyan Miyut Hakeli V'Ribu Ha'iris. That's the concept that you have a minimum, a small amount of vessels and a lot of oil. Yud represents it's a small vessel but gets a lot of oil. Al derech tzadikim emri ma'at veisim harbe. Similar to we say tzadikim say a little small yud, but they do a lot. That means that it contains a lot. That's the idea of the yud. V'ayim b'gemora noches peri. V'ayim b'gemora peri gimel b'noches afkov teser base. Kitzer. It's interesting that here we have a kitzer right in the middle of the Mamer. And it's not going to start a new ois after that. We're still in the middle of ois gimel. And yet he gives you a kitzer middle of the ois. And then he's going to continue. And then you're going to have ois daled later on. But this is like a kitzer in the middle of the discussion over here. Kitzer. So he says, V'tzimtzum zeh u'kemoshul b'chinas oisius shebenefesh. The tzimtzum that comes down to Gan Eden, to Olam Haba, the Tainuk, the Neshamas, is like the level of Oisius Shebenefesh, and which it starts off with the level of Keser, to Chochma or Bina, to then to Gan Eden. So you have like the level of Oisius Shebenefesh, which is the Oisius Hakika. And then it comes to Machshava. That is like the level, like the two levels of Hakika engraving Ksiva. Notwithstanding that this is Ksiva is separate, but yet it represents the actual Ein Sof. What is it that you are thinking, Machshava? So while it's Kasiva, it's like the joy, that is the seichel itself. It's not something different. The same thing is the ink unites with the white klaf that tolerates it. Likewise, in the example, through the letter Yud, the Olam Haba was created. Nimshach u'mizgala Ein Sof Baruch Hu ba'atzmei. That reveals the Ein Sof himself. Now, let's do another piece, a little bit more. Zehu she'asrafim Oimrim Kodesh, and this is why the Srafim we're talking about, they have the revelation of the Ein Sof. That's why we say a Srafim v'Ifanim v'Chayis HaKodesh. Now the Srafim are in the higher level, the level of Bria. Why do they say Kodesh? They say Kodesh, Evrim Kodesh. Machmas hasagosom oirin sof baruchu, because they understand, they grasp the oirin sof, shuhu muvdol v'leis machshavet tfisabei, that he is distinct, separate, and nobody can grasp him. They realize that, they have that appreciation, so that's why they say Kaddish. Oh wow, Kaddish, Hashem is separate, means that is higher. Why do they say 3 times Kaddish? V'gimul pamim Kaddish. Negetlas Elamim Biyah. That corresponds to the 3 worlds. Bria, Yitzira, Asiya, which means Hashem is Kaddish from Bria, He's Kaddish from Yitzira, He's Kaddish from Atzilus. And then they say Kaddish, 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 Hashem Tzvakos, and then they continue Meloi Kol Haaretz Kevoidei. That the Kol fills his slapshus b'chinas Kaddish hu hakoil. That is the dressing up, that level of Kaddish, that is Meloi Kol Haaretz Kevoidei, that fills the whole with the Eibshus Kedusha. Return to learn what it means to say. K'moi shebegan Eden Elyon Meir Ein Sof b'chinas hasagas haneshamas, just like in the upper level of Gan Eden, which is in Bria. Over there, you have shining the Ein Sof, so that the neshamas can grasp. Likewise, the Srofim, the fish, Shem Gam Kem Belam Habriya, because they're also in the world of Bria. Emrim Kodesh. Why? Shemasigim, because they grasp Eich Ein Sof Muvdol, how the Ein Sof is separate. Ve'eich shekol ha'hamshocha rak al-yedei tzimtzum ois yud, and how the entire hamshocha from Ein Sof comes in the letter yud. Avol atzmis Ein Sof u'kodesh u'muvdol. So everything comes through the yud, but the essence of the Ein Sof that comes through the level of yud is immortal. Since they're in Bria, which is the beginning of the Savas of Yesh Me'ayin, Al-Kain Masikim Shu Yisborach Kodesh, that's why they grasp that Hashem is Kodesh. Ve'inyan Gimel Pam Kodesh, the 3 times Ayma Shekosu B'Biyur, Al-Posik V'Ato Yigdal, and Al-Posik Achrei Abai L'Kechem Telech. So that's the level of the Srofim. And the Srofim are in the world of Bria. But the Ifanim who are in the low Madrega, they say, Baruch Kvoid Hashem, they say, blessed is the Kvoid Hashem. They don't grasp, they only say the Kvoid Hashem. What is Kvoid Hashem? So Midas Malchus is Baruch. They say, blessed is the glory of Hashem, only the level of Malchus is blessed Malchus. Ki Malchus Malchus kol ha'olamim. Because the level of Malchus, that is the Malchus of all worlds. Shekol ha'olamim rak b'chinas oisius. All the worlds are only in the level of oisius. Ubaruch v'nimshach b'chinas soviv kol almim. Baruch, that is derives brach of Lasham Shochan. It derives in Nimshach Mibchinas Seviv Kol Almin the Iskasia Hulu. Explaining this idea is Ki Hine Yesh Nei B'chinas B'Malachim. We have 2 types of Malachim. Yesh Hem B'chinas Mashpim. There are those Malachim that give, they present the flow. Shehem Mashpim Kol Hashpoyas Leilum Hazeh. They give all the flows into the worlds, Aldea Mazolis Chulu, through the Mazolis, the constellations. They are the Malachim that channel and present the flow to this world. The Haim, B'chinas Ifanim, they are the level of Ifanim. She'emrim Baruch Kvoid Chulu. So they say Baruch Kvoid, which means Baruch Hu Hamshocha, Sheyumshach Kvoid Hashem B'chinas Mekayim. They want to be mamshich the Kvoid Hashem Mekayim. Shu Mekayim Shel Olam Ve'ein Olam Mekayim. Okay, let's start over from Obira Inyan over here because we're getting late over here. So we'll start over here, and Mr. Shem. So tomorrow we'll be mamshech from there. Okay?
Okay.
Because not something that we're going to be able to really finish.